You thought it was over. You thought that betrayal ended your worth. That divorce ended your purpose. That mistake ended your calling. That silence from heaven was the end of your story. But I came to break the loop today, to look into the eyes of someone who's standing at a gravesite of their dream, and tell you, what you thought was an ending was actually a beginning. Because God doesn't end stories the way we do. We write periods, He writes commas. We grieve what we lost, He grows what we didn't see. We cry, "It's over." He whispers, "I'm just getting started." When the disciples watched Jesus take his last breath on that cross, they didn't hear, "It is finished." They heard, "It is failed." But what looked like the final chapter was actually the prologue. This message is for the ones who've buried hope too soon, for the ones who closed the book too early, for the ones staring at the ashes, thinking God is done. But God is saying to you, I only let it die so I could resurrect it right. So if you're breathing, you're not finished. If there's still pain, there's still purpose. This is not the end. This is the beginning. We all love the beginning of a thing, the fresh start, the clean slate, the honeymoon phase of the marriage, the excitement of the new job, the passion of the fresh vision. But nobody talks about the metal. Nobody preaches about the messy in-between. Nobody wants to post about the part where what you thought God said doesn't look like what you're living through. See, we expected the promise, but got the process. We prayed for purpose, but walked into pain. We asked for growth, but God gave us a grave. I know what it's like to say, God, if this was you, then why does it feel like the door just slammed shut in my face? I know what it's like to stare at an empty room, an unanswered prayer, a dream that dried up, and think, this is where it ends. But let me ask you something. What if the very thing that felt like rejection was actually redirection? What if God didn't let it work out because He's setting up what will? The enemy wants to convince you that closed doors equal dead dreams. But sometimes God closes one chapter to force you into the next. You thought the layoff ended your career, but it actually freed you to start the calling. You thought the breakup ended your love story, but it was God making space for covenant. You thought the breakdown ended your strength, but it was God exposing where you needed His power most. It looks like an end, but it's actually the first step into what He really has for you. Here's the tension. We serve a God who speaks in beginnings, but we live in a world that constantly screams, it's too late. We are taught to believe in happily ever after, but life often gives us, what now? And when life doesn't go according to plan, we don't just question our situation, we question our identity. You don't just lose the job, you lose your sense of value. You don't just lose the relationship, you lose your sense of being wanted. You don't just lose the dream, you start to believe you never heard God in the first place. That's the real conflict. It's not just about what ended, it's about what that ending made you believe about yourself. This must mean I'm not chosen. This must mean I'm not called. This must mean God's favor left me. This must mean I failed. But what if the thing that ended was actually sent to expose what wasn't real in the first place? What if God had to end what you thought was solid to build something that would actually stand?
We cry over the relationships that didn't work, but don't see how they were draining our soul. We mourn the position we lost, but don't realize it was limiting our capacity. We beg God to bring back what broke us, but because we don't yet recognize it was bondage disguised as blessing. Let me tell you something bold. God is not afraid to break your heart if it means saving your soul. And that's what makes this message so urgent. You've been grieving something that God was glad to remove. You've been calling a burial what heaven called a birth. This is where many get stuck, right at the fork in the road. Grave or garden? Is this where it ends or where something new begins? Don't confuse closure with completion. Don't confuse pain with punishment. Don't confuse silence with absence. God is still writing, and He does His best work right after it looks like everything's over. Let me take you to one of the most misunderstood miracles in Scripture. In the 11th chapter of the book of John, Lazarus is sick, and Mary and Martha do what we would all do. They send for Jesus. But then it says something wild. Jesus hears that Lazarus is dying and waits. He doesn't rush. He doesn't heal from a distance. He stays 2 more days. By the time Jesus shows up, Lazarus isn't just sick. He's dead, buried, wrapped up, 4 days in the grave. And Martha says what many of us have prayed before. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Translation: God, you came too late. This should have ended differently. This wasn't the story I expected. But then Jesus drops the shift. Didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? See, they wanted a healing, but Jesus had something bigger, a resurrection. They asked for restoration. He planned revelation. Because what looked like the worst moment was actually a setup to reveal who He really was. I am the resurrection and the life. Not just the God who prevents death, but the God who speaks after it. That's what this whole message hinges on. God doesn't just stop bad things from happening. He steps into what already seems dead and brings life anyway. So don't misread your Lazarus moment. It's not proof that God abandoned you. It's proof that He's about to reveal Himself in a way you've never seen. This is where the shift happens.
Because maybe God let it die so He could resurrect it right. You were trying to hold it together, trying to keep it breathing, trying to make it work. But God said, I'm not interested in preserving what you built out of fear. I'm about to birth something out of faith. You thought that job was the plan. You thought that relationship was the one. You thought that season would last forever. But if it had gone your way, you would have settled for something smaller than your calling. See, you were asking God to save the ship, and He was preparing to part the sea. You were asking Him to patch the walls, and He was laying a whole new foundation. Because He's not just the God of what was, He's the God of what will be. You keep praying, God, bring it back. But God's saying, I didn't come to bring it back. I came to bring you forward. That's why the ending hurts so bad, because you weren't just losing something, you were shedding an identity. You were never meant to be defined by that title, that relationship, that income, that stage of life. God let it collapse so you could rise in the truth of who you really are. This is the moment where you realize the grave isn't where it ends. It's where God begins again. Jesus didn't avoid the cross. He embraced it
because he knew resurrection only comes after something dies. So maybe this is not your failure moment. Maybe this is your resurrection moment. Let the old version of you stay buried. Let the fear stay buried. Let the timeline you built stay buried. Because new life is coming up out of this. Here's what you need to do right now. Stop rehearsing the end and start preparing for the beginning. Some of you keep replaying the conversation, rereading the email, revisiting the pain, retelling the story as if it's your permanent address. But if God says this was a beginning, you need to start acting like new life is coming. Start speaking like resurrection is possible. Start planning like purpose is still alive. Start moving like God is not finished. Get up and write the vision again, apply again, forgive again, try again. Yes, even after the ending. You thought it ended with the layoff. Start the business. You thought it ended with a heartbreak. Heal, grow, and open your heart again. You thought it ended with a diagnosis. Start declaring healing, emotionally and spiritually, over your body and mind. Faith isn't just a belief, it's a posture. Stand up straight, square your shoulders, lift your head. Don't let what ended define what's next. Let what ended fuel what's next. Because beginnings require movement, and God says, if you'll move with me, I'll make beauty out of what broke you. I declare over you right now, this is not your ending. This is the birthing place of destiny. Every lie that told you it was too late, every voice that said you missed your moment, every thought that whispered you're done,
is silenced by the voice of God saying, I'm not finished. I prophesy a resurrection in your spirit, that the same power that raised Jesus from the grave is now raising your confidence, raising your purpose, raising your identity. You will not stay buried in regret. You will not be chained to what ended. You will not define yourself by what failed. You are not the death. You are the life that comes after it. This is the season where God rewrites the story, where graves become gardens, where endings become entries, where loss becomes launch pads. Repeat after me. This is not where I stop. This is where I start. I'm not buried, I'm being planted. I'm not done, I'm just beginning. I believe it, and I will walk in it. This is your moment, and this is just the beginning. Let me tell you a quick story. There's a species of bamboo in Asia that defies logic. You plant it, water it, nurture it, and for the first 5 years, nothing breaks the surface. No green sprout, no visible progress, just dirt. But if you keep going, in the 6th year, it shoots up 90 feet in just a few weeks. Now here's the question. Did it grow in 6 weeks or in 6 years? See, while it looked like nothing was happening, roots were being established, structure was being built, strength was being developed. The beginning didn't look like a beginning. It looked like silence. Some of you have been in that silent dirt season, buried beneath the weight of what ended. No fruit, no evidence, no movement. But I came to tell you, you've been growing underground. And what God is about to release is going to make sense of everything you endured.
So don't curse the dirt. Don't resent the silence. Don't quit in year 5. Because year 6 is coming. And when it breaks through, it will be undeniable. What you thought was the end of you was actually the deepest preparation for the most explosive beginning. If this word hit you, it's because God is not done with you. This wasn't just a video. It was a resuscitation. God just shocked your spirit back into rhythm. So here's your moment. If you're ready to stop calling it an ending and start walking like it's a beginning, say this with me. God, I give you what I lost. I give you what I buried. And I give you what I stopped believing for. Resurrect my faith. Resurrect my purpose. Resurrect me. And if you meant that, then your beginning just started right now. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. You're not forgotten. You are exactly where God needs you to build what eye hasn't seen and ear hasn't heard. Now don't just hear this word. Live it. Share it. Speak it. And if this stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Click subscribe so you never miss what God is speaking next. Like this video so others can find it. And drop a comment right now. This is not the end. This is my beginning. Because your story isn't over. It's just getting started.